What's going on, guys, and welcome back to WrestleRant, where every single Tuesday right here on the show, I, Graham G.S. Matthews, break down all the pay-per-views that I watch on the WWE Network. And today we're talking NXT TakeOver, considering I've since watched every WWE pay-per-view ever, believe it or not, over the past 3.5 years. We are now moving on to the NXT Live specials after talking about Beast in the East, Roadblock, WWE Live at MSG, before we move on to the WCW shows later on this year. So last week we talked about NXT Arrival. Check out that review if you haven't already. Today we're talking NXT TakeOver that started the trend of every NXT Live special, starting with NXT TakeOver, airing on the WWE Network in May of 2014. Now, NXT Arrival was an amazing show. It remained to be seen how NXT could follow that up with another strong show, and they did so here. They did so with Fatal 4-Way. They did so with Our Evolution. And the trend has not stopped since. Every NXT show, every live special they've done, every takeover has ranged from good to great to amazing. And it all really started technically with the Rival, but this was the premier takeover event that I think kind of gets overlooked more often than not. I mean, I wouldn't put it in the upper echelon of the NXT TakeOver shows. Among one of the better live specials we've seen, I thought Arrival was a bit better. But it still is a very good show considering all the matches that you had on here. And, the two standout matches that I'll talk are rather three standout matches towards the end. The final three matches were just tremendous, which I'll talk about momentarily. We did open the show with Adam Rose taking on Camacho, a random match, I know. Adam Rose had just debuted on the main roster. Camacho was on his way out. I'm pretty sure he got cut about a week or so later after this match. Pretty basic bout. The fans were still into Adam Rose at this point, despite the fact his main roster run never really took off as officials had hoped. I mean, here's what probably happened. The guy debuted in NXT right after WrestleMania, and of course in front of the Full Sail crowd. They ate it up, and officials saw that. No, it wasn't after WrestleMania, it was after Arrival, because they started airing vignettes for his debut on Raw after WrestleMania. So he had no more than 2 appearances on NXT before they just decided to call him up out of nowhere. Completely random. Obviously, the timing was not right. They didn't flesh out his character enough, and that's why he, failed miserably on the main roster when he debuted in May of 2014. But he was still kind of in NXT around this time, which is why he showed up on this special, having a decent match with Camacho, scoring the victory as he should have to further his momentum. Camacho, as I had said, would be gone from the company no more than a week or two later. I think he probably got cut with the rest of them, with the guys like Jinder Mahal, Drew McIntyre, Evan Bourne, Teddy Long, Oksana, Brodus Clay, Kurt Hawkins, that whole slew of women and guys and whatnot from June of 2014. He would go on to get some, amazing success, obviously in Japan, a lot more than Adam Rose, believe it or not, as part of the Bullet Club. I think currently he's part of the IWGP Tag Team Champions. I might be wrong. He's not Tama Tonga. He's the other guy, I believe. Not Bad Luck Fale. I forgot what his name was, but he's doing really well for himself in New Japan, which is great for him. After that, for the NXT Tag Team titles, we had the Ascension defending against the team of Kalisto and El Locale. We really did not see too much of El Locale in NXT prior to this point, and this would be his last match with the promotion. He would get cut not long after this. He is the former Ricardo Rodriguez, and I had always said throughout, Ricardo's run on the main roster, why not just let the guy wrestle? Like, they would have him do a few matches here and there, but they would pretend like he didn't know how to wrestle. But in reality, he did. He was a wrestler, I believe, before coming to WWE, or he was in developmental, whatever. This might have been the gimmick he had in FCW before he was called up, but that's neither here nor there, because when he got called up or called down, whatever, to NXT to use this gimmick, he sucked. He wasn't any good at all. Him and Kalisto had very little chemistry. This match was not really all that good. I was hoping they would win the tag titles just because by this point I was sick of the Ascension as tag team champions. Of course, Kalisto would go on to find a much better tag team partner, ironically enough in Sin Cara, who was also known for botches and whatnot, but El Locale was way worse. He was not good. This was not his best showing. It's not like that he was overweight, but I don't really think that was part of the problem because he could still go. But he was very sluggish. He just could not keep up with Kalisto. It was not a good match. Just not a good match. Obviously, officials soured on the team very quickly, and he was cut from the company not long after. The Ascension still the NXT Tag Team Champions. It was either after this match or after the next match. We had a promo in the ring with Rusev and Lana. Another package that had just debuted from NXT on the main roster immediately following WrestleMania. Just cutting a promo how dominant Rusev is. Pretty short and sweet. Before Mojo Rawley came down with a flag, saying God knows what, before getting quickly squashed by Rusev. Not in a match. Rusev just literally beat the shit out of him like 2 or 3 times. He locked in the accolade on the top of the ramp. A great sight, by the way, given how obnoxious Mojo Rawley was and still is to this day. So that happened to kind of further Rusev's momentum as he kind of embarked on a career on the main roster, going undefeated up there. Next match, we had Tyler Breeze taking on Sami Zayn, with the winner earning a future NXT Championship matchup. This was tremendous. This was great. Tyler Breeze, I think both guys actually, debuting new theme songs on this show. Sami Zayn having the theme he has now, as does Tyler Breeze. But of course, Tyler Breeze was a much bigger deal 3 years ago than he is today. I like Breezango, don't get me wrong, but Tyler Breeze really was a star on the rise in the spring of 2014 in NXT. I mean, the gimmick was only going to go so far, I understand that, but they really did relay that aggression that he showed in this match much more here than they ever had before, prior to this point, dating back to his debut in the company, or rather NXT specifically, in July of 2013. He had an amazing showing here. Sami Zayn's always an MVP. You can always count on him for great matches. This was no different. They told the story here that he was looking to redeem himself coming off the loss to Cesaro at Arrival, and he was looking to contend for that championship, but Tyler Breeze had none of a sob story. He could not have cared less. He wanted to win for himself, as he did. I thought the finish here was clever, something definitely unique, whether you liked it or not, but Sami Zayn went for the haluva kick, and he technically hit it, but he really didn't, because Breeze ducked down and put his arms up, which isn't technically considered a low blow. And I guess the referee believed him. He could have lied and said, I did that when he actually didn't. The referee would have believed him, apparently, but whatever. So with Sami Zayn crotched, Tyler Breeze took advantage, hit the beauty shot, and scored the 1-2-3, a shocking clean victory for Tyler Breeze, earning that future NXT title match. So this was a great match. Really, really awesome outing for Tyler Breeze. Really in a coming out party, so to speak, for him as a wrestler. I mean, he was pretty well known by this point. He was very good in the ring. He had some decent matches in NXT TV, but he was never really given the chance to shine as he was here. And Sami Zayn made him look like $1 million. I mean, again, Breeze was already great, but he really came into his own in this matchup, proving he had what it takes to not only be a legit contender to the NXT Championship, but be a future NXT champion, which we never got to see, sadly, but he was in the upper mix in that title conversation for quite some time throughout 2014. After that, for the NXT Women's Championship, the vacant NXT Women's Championship, we had Natalya taking on Charlotte, not yet known as Charlotte Flair. Charlotte had Ric Flair in her corner. Natalya had Bret Hart in her corner. So the story here was this. Paige, who was the inaugural and first, and that means the same thing, the first ever NXT Women's Champion. I'm sorry, it's still early in the morning as I recorded this. She vacated the title coming out of WrestleMania after winning the Divas Championship upon her debut on Raw. JBL, who was the then general manager of NXT, declared that she could no longer be the NXT Women's Champion if she was on Raw and SmackDown. So they had her vacate the belt, and they did a tourney on NXT TV leading up to the show, coming down to Charlotte and Natalya. Now, Charlotte, prior to this point, really had not much experience. Like, she was doing some stuff on TV with Summer Rae and Sasha Banks as the BFFs, but in terms of in-ring experience, she really had yet to do all that much. She had just debuted on TV less than a year earlier. I think she signed to the company in 2012, so she had not been around in wrestling for that long prior to this match, yet they fucking killed it. You can really trace it back to this match, and I talked about it in my Arrival review too. I still say Paige and Emma really deserve more credit for kicking off the Divas Revolution or Women's Evolution, whatever the hell you want to call it, just really in how changing how women were viewed in NXT and later on the main roster. That was further solidified here with Charlotte and Natalya. Natalya's great. I've soured on Natalya in recent years. I will not, be shy in admitting that just because they have done nothing with her character and she just has been around for almost a decade at this point. But, she could still hold her own in the ring even today, but especially back in 2014, 3 years ago. Carrying Charlotte to an amazing match. And I don't want to say carrying. I don't want to say, emphasize that word carrying, because Natalya had a lot to do with this match being great, but Charlotte already was well on her way to becoming a massive breakout superstar. Like, she wasn't the performer she is today, obviously, but she showed signs of immense potential in this contest against someone as established as Natalya. And again, a lot like Tyler Breeze, had a coming out party here and having a strong showing that really turned a lot of heads. The match was terrific. They got a bunch of time in almost 17 minutes. Being called one of the greatest women's matches in recent memory in WWE. And it's hard to argue. Beyond Paige and Emma, I mean, I know the women would continue to kill it on every NXT TakeOver special beyond this. But I would not argue with anyone that called this one of, or if not, I don't know if it was the best match of 2014. It's up there, though. Really, again, changing how women were viewed, not only in NXT, but also on the main roster. Later on down the road, mind you, but still, you can trace it back to this match, to the Paige and Emma match. It all started with NXT. But yeah, this was great. Natalya, Charlotte, just amazing chemistry. I'm kind of sick of them seeing them face off today, 3 years later, after having feud after feud after feud. But this was great. Really, really enjoyed this. So thoroughly enjoyed the match. Of course, Charlotte emerging victorious to become the new NXT Women's Champion, as she would reign as champion for the next 9 months. And then we get to the main event. Adrian Neville defending the NXT Championship against Tyson Kidd. Another great match. I love the story here with Tyson Kidd being desperate to get back on Raw and SmackDown, where he had been once before getting hurt, being demoted, so to speak, back down to NXT, which is really more of a call-up than anything, but that's how we view it, not really the wrestlers, where they make more money on Raw and SmackDown and whatnot. But regardless, Tyson Kidd said that his ticket to getting back to Raw and SmackDown was the NXT Championship. Look no further than Bo Dallas, look no further than Big E and Seth Rollins. Tyson Kidd knew that if he won the NXT Championship, he would be next up to be promoted back to the main stage. And Adrian Neville had nothing of it. I think before this, Neville, or rather Tyson Kidd, had yet to become a full-fledged heel, which is why this worked, because the slow-burning heel turn for him, I thought, worked wonderfully, because he was an amazing heel. I'll talk more about that in my Fatal 4-Way review for NXT TakeOver for many months later, in my next review next week. But no, this was great. They had a lot of awesome spots here. They worked really, really well together, putting forth an exciting effort. The one thing that hurt this match for me, and the weird thing is that I don't think I've seen this show back since I initially watched it 3 years ago, believe it or not. Maybe once, but I don't recall. But what hurt this match for me initially, and watching it back wasn't a problem because I already knew who won, was that watching it the first time around, I kind of knew Adrian Neville was going to win just because he had just won the championship at Arrival. And it was Tyson Kidd. Like, Tyson Kidd was not going to win the NXT championship. By this point, he was still not a believable threat or a challenger to that championship in my mind. But still, the guy's an amazing wrestler. Take nothing away from him in that respect. And that was extremely evident in this contest. Him and Neville really killing it, having an awesome match here. Excuse me, I'm tongue-tied today. Even saying that, I'm tongue-tied. But Neville emerges victorious, still the NXT champion. Afterwards, goes for a handshake with Tyson. Tyson Kidd denies it, and then just walks off. Furthering that heel turn for Tyson Kidd heading into Fatal 4-Way a number of months later. So, great main event, amazing women's match, an awesome match between Tyler Breeze and Sami Zayn. Make this a thumbs-up show. The first two matches weren't bad. The tag team title match was pretty disappointing, and the opener was whatever. But there was nothing offensively bad. There rarely ever is on these NXT shows. But overall, another great show. If you were to say this was better than Arrival, I wouldn't argue with you just because those final three matches were really, really good. Charlotte, I mean, it's weird because you look at Charlotte, you look at Tyler Breeze, and they both had, as I had said, coming out parties on this show, which is why I love to do these reviews many years later to look back on what could have been and what still is or what can be. I don't know. But really, both people, both Tyler and Charlotte, having coming out parties on the show, having amazing outings and having amazing outings, in their respective matches. Tyler Breeze, despite the strong showing here, would never again, or really never hold the NXT championship, whereas Charlotte, in winning the championship here, would go on to amazing success in NXT and on the main roster and so on and so forth. So just because you have this turning point in your career on one of these shows, or really at any point, that doesn't necessarily mean that the future is bright. It should be, but it might not be. I mean, in the case of Tyler Breeze, who had this great outing here and then went on to really do nothing. I mean, again, he never won the championship. The timing was never right. But then beyond that point, would just really flounder out in NXT and then be called up to the main roster and flounder out even flounder around and fizzle out even more on the main roster than he did in NXT. So again, not always the case. But all things considered, a strong show, great takeover. Check it out on the WWE Network, entitled, once again, NXT TakeOver for May of 2014. So, of course, as I mentioned, folks, next Tuesday, we're talking NXT TakeOver Fatal 4-Way from September of 2014. Another really fun show with an amazing main event that I can't wait to rewatch. I don't know if I've seen it since... I might have watched it once or twice with RJ since then, but I feel like I have not sat down to watch it in its entirety since it happened 3 years ago, which is crazy. But anyway, guys, thanks for checking out the video. I appreciate it. Drop a like, comment, share the video, subscribe to the channel. All that stuff is amazingly appreciated. Like I said, we'll be back next Tuesday with another all-new installment in the WrestleRant video series talking NXT TakeOver Fatal 4-Way. Until then, have a great rest of your week, folks. I'm Graham G.S. Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.